Sound check, June 7th, sound check.
And Mr. Chair, we are live.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Hamilton Renewable Power Inc. Board of Directors. It is June the 7th, 2022. We have quorum with Councillor Johnson and myself. Councillor Whitehead is absent. Madam Secretary, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, we do not have any changes today.
So I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by myself, and we're both in favor. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. And we'll just keep the same mover and seconder for the entire meeting so I don't have to say it every time. The minutes from June the 22nd, 2021, moved and seconded. All in favor? We're both in favor, so that's approved. 5.1 is the operational financial updates. So I'd like to welcome Isabella Herman, our new accountant, to provide a presentation.
So, sorry,
Isabella's not here?
No, she's here. She's here.
Okay.
I'll jump in. I just want to make a few opening comments.
Yeah, sure.
So through the chair, there's been a number of changes in the past year with the organizational structure and the governance for Hamilton Renewable Power. And I just wanted to identify them before we go into the operational and financial updates. Starting with the board of directors, the non-voting member is typically the general manager of public works, and that was Dan McKinnon. And that's going to be replaced with Carlisle Khan, who's our new general manager that started on May 30th. He sends his regrets. He had a conflict today, but he will be the new non-voting member for the board of directors. With the retirement of Rick Mail, Shelley Hensmer will assume the role as treasurer. And with Dave Oak's recent retirement, Isabella Herman will assume the role of the accountant in the organization. So today, Tom Chessman, Senior Vice President of Hamilton Renewable Power, will provide a verbal update on the operation end of the business. The most challenging issue over the last 6 months is the operations at the Woodwork plant, and Tom will provide you an overall update on both the Brook site and the Woodwork site and the challenges that we're faced with the Woodwork site. And then we will lead into the financial update, and Isabella has a PowerPoint presentation to walk us through that. So through you, Chair, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Chessman.
Thanks, Rome.
Thanks, Rome, and yeah, through the chair. I just wanted to give a quick update on, you'll see this reflected on the financial slide. So, but basically, at Woodward, we've had some challenges there due to a electrical upgrade project at that site. The upgrade occurred, and the cogen, which was working before the upgrade, and through the commissioning process of that electrical upgrade, the cogen was not working. So there's been a lot of testing, a lot of work done to identify the issues. There would have been some downtime expected through this project, but certainly not what we've experienced. So basically, that cogen's been down since December. So I would have hoped that downtime might have been kept to 2 months or less than 3 for sure. But it has dragged on. There's been a lot of, like I said, testing and work to identify exactly what the issues are. At the end of the day, the project team is paying for the upgrades that do need to be made at the switchgear to have that electricity injected into the grid, if you will. This is a cogen that operates what's called behind the meter, and while we get paid at the meter, the electricity itself does need to flow into the site itself. Which is behind the electrometer at the street, if you will. So anyhow, the cogen was working before the upgrade. It hasn't been working. Not too happy about it, and the resulting revenue loss is significant. So you're gonna see that. So we wanted to make sure we flag that. And like I said, the upgrades, which are likely to cost upwards of close to $100,000 are being paid by the project budget to accommodate what probably should have been accommodated in the original project. So enough said about that. At Glen, the challenge there continues to be the methane, what appears to be methane depletion, which you would expect at a landfill on the existing cells. We do have cells A and B online, and those cells and the new cell C is being assessed, and that assessment is being done by the waste ops staff that manage that Brook landfill site. That assessment is expected in Q3 of this year, so we'll get a better feel for estimates and sort of updates from more detailed updates from the landfill. Cells C, D, and E are to be fully. They've started construction and will be fully complete by September 2023. So just a year and a bit out. So those new cells will have extraction wells for us to get the biogas out of those new cells. But it does take a couple of years for that biogas production to get up to speed, if you will. So this is very much what I've been told by the experts in art and science in terms of seeing that biogas production occur in a landfill and monitor and manage it as best as possible. And that's what we're doing at that site. But some of the challenges have been getting the biogas production like we have had in previous years, and that proves to be challenging. One other thing before I pass this over to Isabella, because there's copper phone lines connecting that site to the Hydro One Nebo TS, the transmission station. It's a requirement to have a connection for safety reasons for the Hydro One to click off the cogen. So there's been a number of issues with bell line trips, and people working on the bell line will cause a signal to go down that bell line and trip the generator at random times. And we've also had a number of thefts of the bell line right off the pole. Big sections of copper line have been found to be gone on a number of occasions. So that's proven to be really challenging for the operator when they're not allowed to run without this trip line being in place and operational. So some funny challenges occurring. Just wanted to highlight those, and I'll stop there. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pass the presentation part of the presentation to Isabella at this time.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, through the chair, I would like to share my screen. Can you see my presentation, financial updates?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. To begin, this financial update will consist of 12 slides. As shown here, I will address the 2021 fiscal performance, present a high-level summary of the 2022 operating budget, provide a profitability projection to the end of this year based on year-to-date operating results, and last, show the trend in Hamilton renewable power earnings and CityNet benefits going back to 2006. All of the 2021 financial information you'll see in these slides were audited by KPMG. A net loss of $265,000 is being reported for 2021, which is attributable to a shortfall in electricity generation revenue for both Woodwork, $17,000 under budget, and Glenbrook, $353,000 under budget. This is an accounting loss, which is net of depreciation and taxes, and has two negative consequences. First, there are no 2021 net earnings, so in accordance with the Council-approved dividend policy, the city will not be eligible for Hamilton renewable power dividend payment this year. The second negative is that the Hamilton Renewable Power retained earnings account that is similar in purpose to City Reserve will need to fund this deficit instead of receiving an earning contribution for the year. Highlighted in this slide are some additional noteworthy facts on last year's financial performance. Payments issued to the city in 2021 for methane, legal, and staff support added up to almost $1 million. At the end of 2021, the year-end cash balance totaled just over $1 million, representing a 30.5 or 270,000 30.5% or $270,000 increase from the previous year. You may ask, how could they experience a positive cash flow when there was a reported 2021 net loss? The primary reason is that the reporting accounting loss is net of depreciation, which is a non-cash expense. As stated in the last bullet point, Hamilton Renewable Power has a PIL tax credit balance of $111,000 with the province, which shows up on the balance sheet as a receivable. PIL tax advances are paid monthly based on previous year final tax owed. Depicted in these slides are the actual revenue earned in 2021. Hamilton Renewable Power has only 3 revenue sources, with electricity generation proceeds from Hydro One, an independent electricity system operator, making up to 90% of the total. Thermal energy in the form of hot water and produced by the Woodwork cogen, and it's produced by the Woodwork cogen and is sold back to the city to be used in various processes and for space heating at the wastewater treatment plant. The 2021 revenue total of $2.4 million here is down $465,000 from $2.9 million earned in 2020, a decline of 16%. This slide provides a breakdown of the 2021 actual expenses and consists only on operating expenses, as there were no capital expenditures in 2021. Operating expenses totaled $2,058,000 in 2021, comparing to $2,197,000 in 2020, which is a decrease of $139,000 or 6.3% from the year before. Since 2017, operating expenses have increased 6.4%, but in 2021, these expenses have decreased for the first time. Repairs and maintenance of the generating equipment, which would include periodic engine overhauls and other preventative maintenance and servicing, is the main cost driver, totaling just over $1.1 million and representing 55% of all operating expenses in 2021. This repair and maintenance percentage remains unchanged from 2020 and has stayed consistent in the 50% to 55% range of total operating expenses in the last 5 years. The other expenses in this bar graph of any significance are pretty well self-explanatory. Depreciation is a non-cash expense consisting of the straight-line amortization of the generating equipment, pipeline, buildings, and grid connections. Professional fees include auditing, accounting, legal, and administrative support. Miscellaneous expense includes utility-related costs like hydro, sanitization, and ground maintenance and bank fees. Communication charges include telephone and network line costs and insurance is made of property and general liability coverage. Picture in this slide is a summary of 2021 actual revenue and expenses compared to budget. As shown on the green shaded line, a net loss of approximately $31,000 was budgeted in 2021 using the 2022 reported outcomes as a guideline. However, as you can see, a net loss of $265,000 was the actual result, falling well under the budget target by $234,000. The main reason for this 2021 loss is a $350,000 budget shortfall in revenues. Brook electricity generation revenues were $353,000 under budget, as production declined 13% from the year before, translating into 2.4 million less kilowatt hours of output. A reduction in the methane gas supply and an increase in downtime hours are the two factors that had a detrimental impact on Brook production in 2021. A 7% decrease in downtime hours for Woodwork in 2021 compared to budget, but corroborated with an overall decrease in hourly kilowatt production of 12% comparing to budget, was also a contributing factor in the lower actual revenue of $17,000. However, due to increased uptime compared to budget, a favorable variance of $22,000 for thermal energy earnings was recorded at this location. On the expense side of the ledger, a favorable variance in operating and maintenance costs of $12,000 and professional fees of $14,000, offset by unfavorable variance of depreciation and miscellaneous, were the main drivers that contributed to overall favorable expense variance. The point of this slide is to emphasize that despite the reporting accounting loss in 2021, the operations of Hamilton Renewable Power were still profitable, although not at a level experienced in the recent past. It is therefore important to put the 2021 actual loss in context in terms of overall financial performance. What you see here is a graph that compares the net income against the EBITDA and cost and cash flow financial measures, which are two indicators that are used to assess the profitability of a company. The acronym EBITDA stands for Earning Before Interest, Tax, Depreciation, and Amortization. It can give the reader an idea how well a company is handling its operating costs by stripping out debt, financing, taxes, depreciation, and amortization in the profitability calculations. The $133,000 EBITDA amount for 2021 is the net return after deducting operating expenses from operating revenues. As you can see here, there is still a healthy margin between the two. Cash flow is another measure used to determine a company's financial health from a liquidity standpoint. It is calculated by taking the net income or loss, adding back non-cash expenses and changes in working capital. The $270,000 positive cash flow amount for 2021 is the excess funds earned and set aside by Hamilton Renewable Power after covering any financial obligations for the year. The audited financial statements include a cash flow statement, which reinforces the importance of cash flow measure. Net cash flow just from operating activities alone in 2021 before tax totaled $246,000. The financial position of Hamilton Renewable Power at the end of 2021 is illustrated in this slide. From an accounting perspective, the 2021 net worth of the company is $5.3 million, as shown under the equity line. This net worth figure is $265,000 less than 2020, with the main reason being the accounting loss recording in 2021. The equity amount is comprised of 600,000 common share value of $10 each that are held by the city, less the reported deficit in the retained earnings account. Outlined in this slide is a high-level summary of 2022 budget compared to 2021. For 2022, a net loss of approximately $226,000 was budgeted, which, as you can see, is a huge shift from the budgeted $31,000 net loss in 2021. The $334,000 reduction in budgeted revenue for 2022 shown under change column is the number that really stands out here and is explanations for the budget loss this year. Two factors that contributed to the decrease in budgeted revenue for 2022 are: first, there was an increase in downtime in 2022, 852 hours more than 2021, which was taken into account when budgeting the 2022 engine run hours used to calculate the expected revenue for the year for Glen Brook. Second, the actual Glen Brook kilowatt hour production in 2021 showed a major decline due to less methane, which impacted the 2022 budgeted production rates. The change in budgeted operating expenses for 2022 was not as dramatic, with a $33,000 drop from 2021. Repairs and maintenance of $29,000, staff support $12,000, and depreciation $5,000 budgets were reduced in 2022, but was offset by a budgeted increase in insurance of $15,000. The 2022 budget includes depreciation expense, which is a non-cash expense. Backing out the depreciation expense budget will result in a positive net cash flow of $234,000 from operating activities this year. If the 2022 actual results end up in a net loss position as budgeted, no dividend payout will be issued to the city in 2023. On the plus side, the 2022 budget will still provide the city with a net benefit of almost $1 million, which represents the sum of payments issued by Hamilton Renewable Power for methane, legal, and staff support. This slide highlights the 2022 year-to-date operating results for the reporting period ending on March 31st. For this 3-month period, an after-tax net loss of $186,000 is being reported as highlighted by the green shaded line. For the same January to March period in 2021, a $64,000 loss was realized, and this translated in a variance of approximately $121,000. The overall March year-to-date net loss this year is mainly attributable to Woodwork, which was down for Q1 due to hydroelectrical upgrade project. The shortfall in revenue, electrical and thermal, was $232,000 comparing to budget. Glen Brook electricity generation revenues were also $91,000 under budget due to lower than expected kilowatt-hour production rates that are dependent on the level of methane in the gas supply. On the expense side, the favorable variance is due to Woodwork maintenance budgeted amount for Q1 was almost $62,000, but there were no expenses associated with maintenance at this location, not actual expenses. Equipment depreciation, being based on run hours, created a favorable variance due to closure at Woodwork and lower than expected run hours at Glen. Brook maintenance was under budget, creating a favorable variance of about $32,000. The favorable variance was partially offset by Woodward operating expenses higher than the budget by $33,000. Compared to the same period last year, the expenses were lower in 2022 by $111,000. Using March year-to-date actual data as a starting point, a net loss of $443,000 is being projected by year-end, which would result in a $216,000 unfavorable budget variance. This year-end forecast has assumed that the Brook will be shut down for 480 hours in 2022, and Woodwork will resume operations starting in July. Budget mitigation options are limited as there are very few discretionary expenses that can be reduced, with the exception of the city staff support payments, which would have a negative operating budget implications for the city. Expenses are not the problem. Lost revenue due to Woodwork shutdown and lower production rates at Brook is what is driving this projected loss. The numbers speak for themselves here. 2022 is not going to be a good financial year for Hamilton Renewable Power from an accounting point of view, although the net cash flow is still forecasted to be positive at $13,000. Should this net loss forecast come to pass, it will result in no city dividend in 2023. This last finance slide summarizes the Hamilton Renewable Power earnings history and savings to city taxpayers since commercial operations began in 2006. Looking at the net income column, you can see that the reporting losses in 2022 and 2021 represent a deviation from a profitability trend. The city dividend in the middle column represents 80% of the net earnings of the previous fiscal year. For example, the $142,000 dividend paid to the city in 2020 was calculated using the 2019 net income figure. The city net benefits numbers in the last column represent the sum of payments issued to the city by Hamilton Renewable Power. The city payments were for legal, accounting, and administrative support and cost of methane consumed by the engines. It will also include the city dividend payout shown in the middle column. These payments have resulted in annual saving to the city in excess of $1 million, exception being 2021, with a cumulative net benefit of roughly $20.8 million. That is the end of financial slides. So I'll pass over to Tom maybe for other, or to you for questions.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add, Tom?
Excuse me. I think if there's any questions, be happy to chat about that. There is some other updates that I wanted to talk about in terms of activity around a report that we had done, but maybe we could address any questions on the financial, and then we can circle back to that later. Would that be okay with you through the chair?
Yep, that's good with me. Councillor Johnson, did you have any questions?
Actually, I have questions about the operations, and it ties into the finances. So I'm willing to wait until Tom's finished with his update. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. The only thing, Rome, are you okay just talking briefly about the status of the report that we had done?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Okay. I think we had mentioned this last year. We're going to commission a report to look at Woodward first, because the contract is coming up the end of 2025. So the question is that we wanted to get an answer on is, what should we do in terms of electricity production, or should we look at doing something else like renewable natural gas, or maybe there's something else that we should look at doing with the biogas that's produced at, in particular at Woodward at this time. The Glenbrook contract comes up in 2027, so we'll have to look at that in the near future as well. But so we had a report commissioned. It just got submitted to us, the final version, on Friday. So the initial comment there is we will bring that report to the next board meeting formally and bring that in. But I would like to give you a sneak peek, and maybe Linda, you could call up the recommendation on the report if it's okay to share the there's one recommendation piece or conclusion in terms of the report, and maybe I could let Linda give us a quick update on that and show us the I don't know, maybe you might have to read it, Linda, because it's so small. And Linda, you
Sorry,
might.
I had to take myself off of mute.
Okay.
Okay, so through the chair, this is the summary and recommendation from the Jacob Energy Options Assessment. So basically, they provided two potential recommendations, or two summary options, I should say. In 9.5.1, it is going 100% RNG, so using digester gas that's produced on site at the Woodward plant. The other is to go 100% CHP, combined heat and power. So the overall recommendation, however, it is recommended that HRPI further consider other GHG emission reduction initiatives within the city and discuss RNG contract pricing prior to selecting a renewable energy approach for the use of the digester gas. Regardless of the alternative that's selected, whether it be the RNG or the, it's recommended that HRPI and the city consider upsizing the BPU equipment capacity to accommodate digester gas projections over the next 20 years. So basically, the recommendation would be to put in either another or a bigger BPU unit and more equipment. I think that basically upsizing and increasing production will provide options to the city of Hamilton to consider potential either continued revenues by selling the RNG to open market, or socializing it internally, using it in our own buildings and fleet to reduce GHG emissions on our pathway to net zero by 2050. So we are currently participating in water workshops to determine next steps for the placement of existing or new equipment within the Woodward site, and then this will ensure that the city and HRPI have options that work to meet whatever pathway is decided.
Great. Thanks, Linda.
Okay.
So basically, RNG looks like the option of choice, and the decision that we'll want to strategize on and bring to you in the perhaps the next board meeting in the fall or AGM will be, is HRPI, Hamilton Renewable Power Inc. going to invest in RNG, or will the city do it? So that we have ownership option decisions to make. What's the best to do there? And like Linda said, should we continue to sell the renewable natural gas to a third party and use the revenues through the energy reserve to do emission reduction projects? Or should we be socializing that, or in other words, bringing that RNG into the city to reduce and mitigate our GHG totals? So in other words, emission reduction using our own renewable natural gas. So those are the two kind of key items that we just wanted to drip into the conversation, and it's nothing to be decided on that, but we really wanted you to hear that and give you a heads up on that, and a formal report presentation, that sort of thing will come in the next meeting.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, Mr. Chair. In light of last week's presentation at GIC with the community energy plan, and then we have the climate change action plan, there's a lot of initiatives that are occurring in the city of Hamilton, and we want to make sure that Hamilton Renewable Power aligns to our emission reductions and our strategy and our pathway to net zero. So we didn't want to bring this report too early and prematurely, with a lot of moving parts within the city of Hamilton, and a decision that needs to be made with Hamilton Renewable Power. I think we need to align and be very strategic on what our next move is going to be, and the next couple of months is really going to get us there. And in light of what I heard last week at GIC, creating this citywide governance model as it relates to community energy and climate change, that very aligns, and the timing's very good for all of us to align strategically for the fourth quarter of 2022.
Thanks, Rome. Councillor Johnson, did you want to ask your questions now?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. So through you, Chair, to Isabella. Isabella, at the last Glenbrook landfill community liaison committee, the questions were asked how much money, how much revenue is being generated by the Glenbrook site alone. And I don't see that in this presentation. I may have overlooked it, or you may have said it and I've missed it. But the residents are really interested to understand this. They put up with a lot of negative input from the Glenbrook landfill. The staff there are amazing and they address everything quickly, but they're still putting up with the big trucks and they're still putting up with some odors. So having that revenue figure, it's almost helps them to understand why the landfill is so important, other than just throwing our garbage away. So Isabella, is it possible to get those figures so we can send them to the community members, or the committee members, please? I think that it's super helpful.
To the chair, yes, absolutely. I'm just looking to see if I have exactly the numbers right now.
Yeah, I'm okay to wait because I understand that we're doing well, but if you can send that to the committee members. I think Rob Conley is the one that's probably going to be your contact person. You can send it through me as well. I can make sure all the committee members have it. It was just a couple of weeks ago we had this meeting, so it's still fresh in their minds.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Tom or Rome, I understand that the internet connections to the Glenbrook landfill are really fragile at best. A case in point, the meeting was actually cut short due to the poor internet connections that we were having. So I understand that's also impeding on the operations out there. So just to give you some background, ancestors of ours who owns the Lime Ridge Quarry up on the mountain advocated and got hydro to the mountain way back when hydro was just being introduced, because it was driven by industry. Is there a way we can negotiate with Bell or whoever to get some strong internet connections out that way, because it is out in the rural area. It is a challenge. We are building new cells, so we will be producing more methane. So this operation's not going away anytime soon. So what can we do to strengthen those internet connections so that the operations are not going to be affected as often, and we don't get bumped out of meetings?
Do you want me to take that, Rome? Yeah. So thanks for that, Councillor. And through the chair, yes, there has been some discussions. And in fact, we worked with our partners at HCE Telecom for the Woodwork connection to remove the existing and more expensive dark fiber connection from the Woodward location over to the Beach TS, which is saved us a little bit of money on our connection costs. So we have been trying to talk to HCE Telecom about solutions. I think that has been met with some expensive options. I don't have the details, but I know that that was brought forward as a discussion item, and they were looking at trying to address some other solutions. The other challenge we have there is Hydro One has very specific requirements, and it's such a long run from the landfill to the Nebo Trans TS, and having a dark fiber, which means your own strand of fiber and nothing else on it.
Right.
It becomes very expensive. And if we're the only, say we're the only, the generator and the buildings there are the only users of that. So that's something we could look into and pursue for some more specifics. Absolutely. But I'm a little leery about finding a solution. I'd definitely like to look for more options and try to pursue that for sure, Councillor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So, Tom, think of me just, I'm a layman person. I don't understand all this. Just to let you know that the Bimbrook Village, their reception increased tenfold because they inserted a bunch of cell phone towers. And we lost the opportunity to put it on city land. It ended up going onto the fairgrounds, which is privately owned. So is it possible, and again, I'm a layman person here, so I'm probably not even on the same plateau. Is it possible to put cell phone towers out there? It is our land. We can put it out there. We can actually collect some rent off it, and everyone in the area would benefit.
That through the councillor and the chair, I definitely would be happy to look into that. I'm not sure either on the telecom side what exactly we might need. We do have a tower. The Hamilton Renewable Power has a tower and a secondary directional, I believe it's an FM signal that has to have a line of sight to the Nebo. So there is a small tower that is there.
Yeah.
And to look at another cell tower in that location and whether we could use it be something we'd have to look at separately for sure.
Thank you. And that's why I asked. I knew about the FM tower. So my next question, if you don't mind, I'm probably going to go over my 5 minutes because I got lots here. So it's back to Isabella. Isabella, your predictions for 2022 were not great. No dividend paid out. What is the prognosis for 2023 and onward? I don't know if I heard that. I don't think I did.
We don't have a prognosis. I didn't present a prognosis for 2023, but it's probably based on the gas supply, most of it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I didn't know if you had any insight as to whether or not 2023 would look a lot better.
I believe it will look a lot better because we're going to have Woodwork. We're going to be up and running. Okay. And I have the number for Glen Brook electricity for 2021. The revenue only on Glen Brook was $1,688,788.
1,688,000. What was the rest of that?
1,688,788.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
Only for Glen Brook.
No, that's super. If we can get that out to the residents, that would be wonderful. If you can just send it to me in an email. And my last question, sir, is...
Sorry,
go ahead,
before we
Isabel.
go on to your last question, I think Tom had something to add for the 2023 or future projections.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just, and I think Isabella covered it off. We will have a lot better insight into 2023 based on the latter half of the Woodward production that we do expect to kick back in July 1st. So that'll be a big plus, and I think Isabella said that at the end of her statement there. And we are working with Rob Conley and the team there to try and optimize that field at Glanbrook. I don't know what to tell you about that. We're obviously hoping to optimize it and get better output, and we're working on it. And but I don't have anything concrete to say for sure that production is going to increase at this time. So that's all I have in terms of future insight.
No.
Okay.
I understand.
Through the chair, if I can add also, we've been talking to the project team at Water, Hamilton Water with their project and the loss, and how do we mitigate that? How do we recover? Is there liabilities on the horizon? So that's where we're talking to our legal department, and keeping in mind that again, the Hamilton Renewable Power subsidiary company of the city of Hamilton, we do have a responsibility to follow through and do our due diligence in terms of contracts and understanding what happened in the last 6 months and why production was down or halted, really not down, halted. And so we're exploring those avenues to see if there's a way to recover or mitigate our situation. So at this point right now, the financials are what they are based on zero production at the Woodwork plant, but we are exploring other avenues or opportunities to recover.
Yep. No, that's awesome. But I guess, again, I know that the Glenbrook landfill is building more cells, and so that production's not going away. I heard earlier that the older the garbage is, the less gas you're getting, but we are going to be, we're constantly generating more and more waste there. So, and we are building new cells coming in the future to expand. So my last question's to Linda, if you don't mind, please. And Linda, you mentioned at the end of that statement of the recommendation that that a reduced digester gas to flare, is that a good thing? That the digester gas going to flare, less gas going to flare is better? It's not burning as much, it's actually generating methane?
Correct.
Okay.
So through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So we have a responsibility, or water has a responsibility as well, to report on how much gas is flared, and the less that they flare, the less are the whatever the requirements are for them environmentally.
Yep, thank you. And I understand that we want to it's wonderful if we can get off the grid as a city, but it would also be great if we could save some money going forward to expand on any other options about energy savings, not just hydro, but other ways. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I know I was taking up a little longer than I normally do, but I appreciate it.
No problem. It's just the two of us. I do have a couple questions, so I'll pass the chair over to you, Councillor Johnson. So in the presentation, there's a focus on the need for additional revenue generation. So at Glenbrook, I understand there's some new cells that will be coming online. I think you mentioned C, D, and E, if I heard correctly. So is there a timeline for when we expect those cells to be, online and producing?
Through the chair, I'll try to answer that. Yeah, the best people to answer that are the Waste Ops team and Rob Conley and his team for sure. But I did get a note from him. I was inquiring about that, and yes, I have been informed that once those cells are completed, it will take a couple of years for the production to start to build up again. Is it going to be 1 year? Is it going to be 3 years? That's the part that's the not the science side of it, it's the art side of it. It depends what's going in, depends how long it takes, depends on a number of factors that is very, very difficult for the industry to even come up with an accurate number.
Thank you. So for the next few years at Glenbrook, we're expecting to see the continuing trend of declining production from the existing cells. Is it a linear trend? Is it, are we expecting it just one day to kind of stop, or what is the projection for that?
Through the chair, the intent is that through optimizing the wells that are connecting to the new cells, there will be some additional increases in the methane availability. That is my expectation. I can't quantify what that will be, unfortunately, but we are expecting a lift in some production. That's the micro view. The macro view is, the landfills do deteriorate over time. And so the options that we would be looking at might include, instead of running 2 engines at a reduced speed, we'd run 1 engine at a higher speed. So we might get into looking at things like that. So it will really be a tricky business from 2023 to 2027 as that contract comes up to be renewed. Or, well, the question will be, what are we going to do with the engines at Glenbrook? And will we run 1 engine or not? Those are things that we'll have to start to consider based on the available gas. And I'd like to hope that we'll get some more concrete information to share with you on that from this Q3 report that's coming from the Waste Ops team. Again, sometime in Q3 is all I know.
Okay, thank you. And then at Woodward, trying to think back as well, I believe our projections there is a pretty big increase in availability. Am I remembering that right? Like once all the work that's going on there is complete?
Yeah, through the chair. So we've had 0 production since December. We expect to go back to normal production July 1st. That's the expectation as part of this process. Does that answer your question, though?
No, I meant the methane gas availability.
Oh, in terms of available methane at the site at Woodward, through the chair, yeah, there's definitely some long-term forecasts that gas that's available from the digesters has been in around if you want a number, it's around 20 to 22,000 cubic meters a day. That very likely will increase over time. Certainly, they're building that wastewater plant to accommodate population growth and as well. So there will be increases in available gas. And I think to tie in what Linda was saying earlier about the flaring, right now we have these 3 options. There's the Herpy option with running the cogen. And then we have the biogas purification unit. That was the BPU. That's city-owned asset. It's not a Herpy asset. Just want to remind everybody. But those 2 can both use the available biogas. And then the backup for both of those, of course, if neither of those things are running, the flare is always there. So to tie in Linda's comment and saying, anything we flare is lost revenue, either to the city through the BPU or through Hamilton Renewable Power and the cogen. So we want to mitigate that flaring, whatever it is, and we can certainly accommodate increase. And so the recommendation in the report was speaking to if we're not going to produce power, we have approximately 10 to 15,000 cubic meters of available biogas on any given day. And so what do we do with that? We produce more electricity, and the report saying, no, you should look at expanding your RNG production. So maybe that's what you're referring to, expanding the RNG production is actually using the biogas that would have otherwise be used for the cogen. Sorry for the long answer.
No, thank you. And in the report that we're expecting, that you gave us a preview of, that we're expecting a more fulsome report on, is there a revenue difference between the recycled natural gas being used to generate electricity, which generates revenue, versus selling the recycled natural gas directly as a fuel?
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah. So you start off with biogas, and it gets converted to renewable natural gas, which is right now sold to a third party. And the revenue we get from that is greater than taking the biogas and producing electricity or renewable electricity and getting the revenue from a very old electricity contract. So there's certainly more economic value, and you'll see that in the economic analysis in this report. It's going to be pretty clear from the detailed overview of the financial aspect. So I think you'll appreciate seeing those numbers in that report.
So through the chair, I think there's both economic and environmental benefits as we start to reduce the emissions or socializing the what did you call it, Tom? Socializing the
RNG, yeah.
The RNG in the organization. I think that's where we're trying to align with what's happening with our community energy plan and our climate change action plan, and tying it into that strategy.
Thank you. And that's my last question, Madam Chairman, is in the climate change action plan, there's a carbon budget for the city overall. So obviously Hamilton Renewable Power fits into that. So what discussions are we having of how we'd be quantifying or contributing to that overall carbon budget, or is that still really in the early stages of development?
Do you want me to take that, Rome?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So Roma's and Linda were alluding to that pathway to net zero. That's a term that we're and obviously action that we're targeting different groups corporately. So, for instance, Rome's team and the corporate buildings team, we're looking at, okay, what are emissions from buildings, and what do we got to do to get to that? What's our pathway to net zero look like? And so it'll generally follow the 3-step that you might have heard before: the efficiency first, once you're efficient as possible, and look at renewable energy. And your third and final option is look at your offsets. So to have our own renewable natural gas to offset, and emission credits to offset our own buildings would be great. So then we look at the other portfolios. So fleet, which includes transit, and corporate buildings represent about 80% of our corporate emissions. So transit in particular, in the CNG buses is a great solution, a great budget option for compared to diesel, but we have to address those emissions. So those, what do we want to do with that? And I know transit's looking at a pathway to net zero that includes renewable natural gas. We've already re-upped on our second year for that carbon negative bus. To highlight that there's solutions for CNG buses. Compressed natural gas buses can be greened up, if you will, using a renewable natural gas. So there's solutions that are unique to each portfolio, and all of that ties into the broader messaging that Rome was referring to in the community energy and emissions plan, using our enhanced renewable natural gas production and bringing it in-house. That's definitely an option. And then expanding to things like, it's out of our scope here, but what about all that green bin waste? That's a big methane source, and so I couldn't help but say that. But it's out of our scope today. But there's other opportunities to pursue. Let's leave it at that.
Yes, through the chair. Because Hamilton Renewable Power is a separate entity, it will need to be policy driven, and that's where we need to strategize on how we align ourselves. And as much as the city's getting a financial dividend, there might be a term called an environmental dividend, and that's where those emissions would go to, or the net zero strategy would go to assist the city of Hamilton's climate change action plan. But they would have to be policy driven, and we need to bring this to both the board of directors and city council, and getting our minds around that type of policy and that type of strategy.
Thank you. And I think that's exactly what I was thinking, that if we are, as a municipality, going to put a price on carbon and have a carbon budget, then that's a new revenue line, basically, for Hamilton Renewable Power, because we'll be selling carbon offsets, basically.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you. So I'll take the chair back, Madam.
Okay.
Thank you. So is there any other discussion? Seeing any, Councillor Johnson. So I'm going to just go back to my roadmap. So we need a motion to receive.
Move to receive.
So moved and seconded and approved. Thank you. And then on motions, we have the 3 motions before us today, 6.1 to 6.3. So moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by myself. Is there any discussion on the 3 motions before we pass them? Councillor Johnson, anything?
No, I'm good. I'll move all 3.
Okay. So moved and seconded, and that is approved. Thank you. Going back to my roadmap here. So is there some discussion on the resolutions that were approved on 6.2, the audited financial statements, and 6.3, the budget? Is there anything that you need to add, Tom?
Nope, I'm
anybody
all
else?
out of gas.
Okay. So if there's no discussion on that, we've already had a good discussion on the rest. Then I need a motion to adjourn, I believe. Yes. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by myself. Are we good, Madam Secretary?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Oh, not yet. I wanted to
Nope.
ask one thing. If
Okay.
you could put a notice of motion or a motion forward that from now on, Hamilton Renewable Power will be HRP Inc., period, not the Herpy. So I know that Rome checked with legal. We're not changing the name of it. We're just changing the initials of it.
Sure. Do we need direction for that, Madam Secretary?
We'll bring a motion to the next meeting for that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, have a good
And
day.
then we did schedule our next meeting, I believe in September will be scheduled, correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.